Fishing is as good as it gets here.
A world-class fishery.
Still world-class.
World-class.
And world-class fishing.
It is truly a world-class bass fishery.
The finest state in the lower 48 for trout and salmon.
You just can't beat the quality in the state of Maine.
It's still one of the most unbelievable places you can go is here in Maine.
We have customers from New Zealand, we have customers from England, we have customers from Argentina and Chile, Central America, and of course across the United States.
I guide international bankers from Switzerland. I guide federal judges, attorneys from Florida. I've had people come from the West Coast, and they all rebook again because of the quality of the experience up there. I've been in Alaska fishing, I've been to Iceland fishing, I've been to Scotland. You just can't beat the quality in the state of Maine for the convenience of it. Because you can be in a major city and be in Maine in just a few hours and be like you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you are.
And Moosehead Lake is the largest lake in the United States contained within the borders of the United States that wasn't created by a dam. 285 feet deep, 50 miles long, 20 miles wide, giant reservoir of water, cold water, coming down the Kennebec River, and the east outlet is the top 4 or 5 miles of that tributary coming out of the lake. So it's brook trout and salmon fishing, and it's pretty good.
If you have a passion for smallmouth fishing like I do, we have some of the finest smallmouth fishing, certainly in Maine. 20-inch fish is really a common creature. There'll be days that we may not catch a 20-inch fish, but there won't be that many.
I've fished all over the world, and one of the things I really like is dumb fish. I don't like fish that have seen the same flies or the same lures over and over and over and over. And really, we have so much fish in the state of Maine where the fish are not pressured. And you could spend an entire summer up here just fishing a river almost every day and fish a different river. But if somebody wants to go smallmouth fishing and lives anywhere near the eastern United States, Maine is the place to go.
As I traveled around and talked to biologists, fish culturists, game wardens, anglers, and well-known registered Maine guides, it became clear that Maine is a world-class fishing destination. Guides who earn their living taking people fishing were making claims that sounded like, well, quite frankly, fish stories. So I wondered why more people, Mainers included, didn't know how special and unique Maine is. That's when we decided to tell how special Maine is, what registered Maine guides have to say, and how on earth did we manage to create such a wonderful fishery. So sit back and enjoy as we show you the best kept secret in North America and a wicked good deal for Maine.
Some of the best brook trout caught in the state of Maine will be found in the Kennebago and the Cupsuptic. 4-pound brook trout is not uncommon.
The fishery is incredibly dynamic. We have rivers, lakes, streams, ponds. You can catch multiple species of fish. And I also think you have to consider where it is that you're fishing. Maine is a state that is absolutely rich in natural resources, plant, animal life, mountains. It's absolutely a beautiful place to fish. So you've got incredible fishing amongst a spectacular backdrop.
But I have camps in Labrador, which has probably the best fishing in the world. And I don't know how to say this, but I would rather fish in Maine because of the variety of the scenery, the fishing, the fish themselves, the type of waters. There's no comparison.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the fishing is great, but they also come for the diversity of fishing, that hometown feeling, the abundance of wildlife, and the unmatched beauty. Maine has more than 6,000 beautiful and clean lakes and ponds, and 32,000 miles of rivers and streams where anglers can fish year-round for trout, salmon, bass, and togue. And Maine has 1,135 lakes and ponds with substantial brook trout populations, far more than any other state. The Maine legislature has designated over 300 of these lakes and ponds that have never been stocked as heritage brook trout waters. The unique nature of this resource was recently highlighted by the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture, which proclaimed Maine the last true stronghold for wild brook trout in the eastern United States, with more than twice the number of intact watersheds as the other 16 states in the Eastern Range combined. Furthermore, Maine is the only state with extensive, intact populations of wild, self-reproducing brook trout in lakes and ponds. Maine's lake and pond brook trout resources are the jewel of the Eastern Range. Most of our salmon drainages have populations that were introduced, but 4 drainages in Maine have native landlocked salmon populations.
Maine has always undersold itself for some reason. Being the Yankees, we feel that, you know, we just can't charge too much for a product. It's the best deal going.
The state of Maine is an unbelievable bargain. License rates are low. Guide fees are inexpensive. If you fish certain parts of this country, the Florida Keys, for example, you can drop $550, $600 a day just on guides fees. Whereas up here, guides fees are still reasonable. Lodging is still reasonable. Meals are still home cooked and served to you. Shore lunches are still provided the way they did it, 60, 70, 80 years ago. So you get this great experience without having to pay a fortune for it.
Convinced, and with my chest swelling with pride, I had to ask someone how the department had been able to preserve, protect, and manage the landscape and fisheries. John Boland, the director of the Fisheries Division, has been with the department for more than 30 years. Surely he'd be able to tell me how they did it.
We're very proud of the outstanding fisheries here we've got in Maine. We collect a lot of biological data, and along with that we have a lot of face-to-face interviews with the public almost on a daily basis. That gives us the opportunity to bounce some of these ideas off the public, get a sense of what they're looking for, what their needs and demands are. Our overarching umbrella is to ensure the protection of these species. We've got stocking programs that have been changed considerably thanks to diet and technology. We've got the best strains of fish, the higher quality products that are necessary to provide terrific fishing across the state of Maine. We work with the locals to spread the fish around to different sites. In many cases, we stock one site several times depending on the use. There are waters in southern Maine, very, very heavily used waters, that get stocked sometimes 6 or 8 or 10 times a year. For years, Maine has employed the use of aircraft to stock some of our waters. It is a technique that we use in order to stock some of the more remote waters in the state of Maine. It's important to base our decisions on sound biology. That means good data. We take extra care to collect the best data that we can, whenever we can, wherever we can. We employ a variety of different techniques, electrofishing streams, trap netting lakes and ponds, all to collect up-to-date, useful information that helps guide us toward future management of those waters. Hydroacoustics enables us to get a better sense of smelt populations so that we can more effectively manage our landlocked salmon and lake trout fisheries, which are dependent on smelts. We've got boat electrofishing units right now, which we did not have 10, 15, 20 years ago, enable us to take a very close, quick look at bass populations, spawning lake trout populations, in some cases salmon populations. All of these advances in technology basically make us better managers of the resource. We're proud of what we've created in Maine. We want to share our fantastic fishing, our abundant wildlife, our beautiful scenery, and good old hometown hospitality.
Everything I learned from dozens of well-known guides and anglers, and from John Boland, certainly seemed convincing. But you know what they say, all fishermen are liars. Maybe people wouldn't believe these incredible fish stories. So I decided to ask Bill Swan, the director of the licensing program, for some historical facts that might prove that these people weren't just boasting and exaggerating.
Over the past 30 years, the state of Maine has seen its license sales increase by 18% to the current levels of over 286,000 licenses per year. During that same time period, the sale of annual fishing licenses to non-resident visitors has increased by 76% to nearly 17,000 per year. We also sell a number of limited period licenses for our non-resident, including 1 day, 3 day, etc. When you total all of these together, we sell over 80,000 non-resident fishing licenses in a year. Maine's resident and non-resident fishing license fees are also lower than most states in the country, including New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Texas, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, and Alaska. According to the 2006 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Survey, Maine is doing very well attracting non-resident anglers to fish in our state. In terms of days of freshwater fishing by non-residents, Maine, at 800,000 non-resident angler days, far outstrips such states as Montana, Wyoming, and even Alaska. Furthermore, resident Maine anglers are not deserting our state to fish elsewhere. According to the same U.S. Fish and Wildlife Survey, Maine anglers spent just 1% of their 2006 fishing days in other states. In other words, we stayed home to fish more than any other state, besting the likes of Alaska with 2% straying, Montana with 4%, Wyoming with 9%, and Colorado with 19%. Apparently, Mainers think the best fishing is right here at home.
I would have a hard time losing an argument with a person who says that our fishery has deteriorated to a point where it's no longer good.
While the fishing is world class, so are the surroundings, so is the wildlife, so is the full experience.
About 100% of the time, the people come there for the quality of the experience, not just to fish, but they often put their rods down just so we could go watch a moose or a bald eagle or hear the loons cackle when they're on the water.
The experience surprises them. They're not aware that there's such a wild and beautiful place so close to a metropolitan area. And it's something that to them has been kept a secret, and it's something that we want to get out there.
I think they were always so rewarded by the experience they had going out there and fishing that there was this draw to come back to the state of Maine.
The bottom line is that once they taste it, they have to come back. And we have clients that come back all the way from the UK, 2 or 3 times a year sometimes, because they need to come back to this area.
Fishing is as good as it gets here.
A world-class fishery.
Still world-class.
World-class.
And world-class fishing.
It is truly a world-class bass fishery.
The finest state in the lower 48 for trout and salmon.
You just can't beat the quality in the state of Maine.
It's still one of the most unbelievable places you can go is here in Maine.
Go to Maine.